All right, let's step into the shadows, into the very corridors of the human mind, with one of the masters himself, Edgar Allan Poe. Today, we're going to be dissecting his unsettling and, darkly hilarious tale, The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. And we're really going to zero in on the strange case of its narrator.
So, think about this for a second. This question, well, it's basically the key that unlocks the whole twisted story. It's this paradox that Poe just plays with so masterfully. Is it possible for a narrator to report every single event with perfect factual accuracy and still manage to lead us, and himself, completely off the rails? As we're about to find out, the answer is a big, resounding, and frankly, a terrifying yes.
So our story kicks off with our main guy, a protagonist we're totally meant to trust. See, he's no fool. He's a man of science, he's rational, basically our stand-in on this little trip to the south of France. He's on the hunt for a very specific private asylum, a maison de santé, this remote, Gothic-looking chateau that's famous for its so-called revolutionary and humane methods of care.
Now, he's not just some tourist, right? He's an investigator. He shows up with this supreme confidence, armed with his intellect, all set to observe and understand this famous soothing system. And that confidence, that intellectual pride, that's the very first crack in his armor. He truly believes his own reason is this impenetrable shield against the chaos he's there to study.
But right away, his expectations are just thrown out the window. He's greeted by the supposed superintendent, a Monsieur Maillard, who tells him, oh, that famous soothing system? Yeah, that was a total failure. He says it's been replaced by a much more radical system, designed by a Dr. Tar and a Professor Feather. This is the first major clue, the first little pull on a thread that, if he just tugged it, would unravel the whole thing. But our guy, he just accepts it, no questions asked.
So then he gets invited to dinner. And this, right here, is where Poe just shoves us headfirst into the grotesque. The banquet is fancy, sure, but something is just deeply, fundamentally off. The air is thick with this surreal energy, this feeling of decadent rot, and that thin line between being a little eccentric and being stark raving mad just starts to completely dissolve.
He's watching, and he sees a woman who, when she's offered some chicken, gets incredibly offended and starts clucking that she herself is a chicken. Our narrator sees this. He notes it down, and he just politely rationalizes it as a peculiar little joke. He's practicing this kind of radical but completely blind honesty. And the absurdity just keeps cranking up. Another guest just stands up in the middle of the room, puts one arm on his hip like a handle, and starts making this whistling sound. He insists he's a teapot, just waiting to boil. And again, our narrator sees the facts of it, but just completely misses the point, chalking it all up to charming local weirdness.
Then there's another guest, just spinning and spinning endlessly, because he's convinced he's a top. I mean, the evidence is practically screaming in his face, but our narrator's intellectual pride, it's like a fortress. He doesn't see these people as what they are, lunatics who've literally taken over the asylum. Nope. To him, they're just originals, eccentrics, whose bizarre behavior is just a fun little personality quirk.
So while our narrator is busy taking notes and getting everything wrong, there's a master conductor behind the scenes orchestrating this whole symphony of madness, Monsieur Maillard.
You see, Maillard isn't just another patient. He's the trickster. He's the imposter. Turns out he was the former superintendent who's now quite mad himself and actually led the inmates in their violent rebellion. He understands our narrator's psychology perfectly, and he plays on his expectations to keep this fragile, insane illusion of order going. This really shows the dark dance going on between these two. On one side, you have Maillard, the trickster. His motive? Pure, purposeful manipulation. He knows what's really going on, and he's the one actively creating this whole fake reality. Then, on the other side, you have our honest guest. His motive is just intellectual pride. He has no idea what's happening, he totally believes the illusion, and his role is to unwittingly report it all, and in doing so, make it seem legitimate. He becomes Maillard's perfect, unsuspecting partner in crime. So when the whole thing finally violently implodes, we're left asking, how could he have been so blind? And this gets us to the absolute core of our analysis, really understanding this narrator's unique and honestly fascinating brand of unreliability. He is what we could call the honest guest. He's honest because he reports the facts just as he sees them. He doesn't lie to us, not once. But his absolute, unwavering faith in his own reason makes him a terribly unreliable interpreter of those facts.
He gives us, the reader, every single clue we need to solve the puzzle, even while he himself remains completely in the dark.
We can really break his failure down into 3 main pillars. First, he has an outsider's perspective, which means he's just describing all this bizarre stuff without any real context. Second, his ego, his intellectual pride. It acts as a mirror for the story's big theme, that our own sanity is way more fragile than we'd like to believe. And third, that radical but totally blind honesty we've been talking about. You know, reporting that a woman is acting like a chicken but deciding she's just quirky, that's the engine that drives the whole story forward.
And then, just like that, the intellectual game is over. The whole charade doesn't just fall apart, it explodes. It's not a gentle realization, it's an eruption of violence. From the cellars, the real keepers of the asylum burst out, the ones who've been overthrown, tarred, and feathered by their own patients. The truth doesn't dawn on our narrator, it literally attacks him, and the surreal little dinner party descends into a terrifying, chaotic brawl. So what does our narrator take away from this whole horrific experience? Well, he gets out physically, but he's spiritually haunted. He has stared right into the abyss and realized that the very floor beneath his feet, that solid floor of logic and reason, is terrifyingly thin.
And this is his final, chilling justification. He doesn't say, "Wow, I was a fool." No. Instead, he insists that any sane, rational person would have been tricked just like he was. And that's where Poe leaves us, with this really terrifying thought. Is he right? Are we all just one surreal dinner party away from finding out that our whole perception of reality is a complete fiction? And this is the thought I really want to leave you with. Think about Poe's other famous narrators, the guy from The Telltale Heart or the protagonist of The Black Cat. Their unreliability comes from guilt, from paranoia, from this spiral into violent madness. Our honest guess, though, he's unreliable because of his sanity, because of his pride, his unwavering belief in his own brilliant mind. So I'll ask you, which form of madness is actually scarier? The one that hears a heart beating under the floorboards, or the one that sees a man pretending to be a teapot and just politely nods along?